Welcome to Wiltshire. To be more precise, Castle Coombe. Castle Coombe is famous for many things. One, because it once won the prize of the most beautiful village in the country. And of course we all know it is famous for its racing circuit, for cars and motorcycles. But to me, it's famous every May for its very attractive steam rally. Because of the nature of the place and its very location, we always get a grand collection of tractors at Castle Coombe. It is an agricultural area. Lots of people with the tractors there come from nearby, but of course there are the exceptions who come from far and wide because of the popularity of this lovely little rally that's held there every year, just adjacent to the racing circuit. A fine example there of the old Field Marshal. Now there was a famous tractor that became very popular during World War II. A diesel engine, but an unusual diesel engine in as much as it only had one cylinder, horizontally mounted, a two-stroke diesel. Very unusual vehicle to start too, and much hilarity has been caused by the people who start them with the, by putting a handle in that flywheel there, or round the front there's a little tap arrangement that you unscrew and put an igniter cartridge in there and strike it with a hammer handle, and it bounces the old engine into life. They shake and go, but believe me, they shake and go for years and years, because there are many of these old tractors still around just like new. Something more delicate now, but not delicate as far as its capability is concerned, is the Alice Chalmers. Alice Chalmers was this particular type was introduced to us during World War II, and were very popular with the land girls because they're much lighter to handle than the old standard Fordsons that we are so familiar with in this country. This is the petrol-driven version. They came over here under what was known as the lease-lend agreement. This was a hire purchase agreement we had with America to help us with our agricultural policy during the war, when we just couldn't produce enough of our own tractors. In this country, the War Agricultural Committee was formed, of course, during World War II, and they employed thousands and thousands of not only men, but land girls. A fine example here of the Tall Mary, as it was well known, that's the Fordson Major. This followed the forever popular Series N standard Fordson. Very similar in construction and mechanical bits and pieces, except that after the war they decided that people wanted self-starters, and of course they were built much higher than the old standard Fordson. This was the start of our big tractors in this country. There's the drawbar hitch on the back. Many of these were fitted with the three-point system that we should talk about more later on. Not only tractors here at Castle Coombe, but little diesel rollers. This is an interesting little roller here by Barford's, called the Pioneer model. And this was a sort of small machine you would see doing small rolling jobs. You see on there that it's got a 980cc Jap engine. Now that's got nothing to do with the Far East. That engine was produced by Jack Prestwick of London, who produced literally hundreds of thousands of engines for small vehicles such as this, and of course the motorcycle industry. Famous old name, the Jap. Quite a simple machine to operate, and to travel backwards was easy. You just merely pulled a lever and it went straight from forward to backwards without any hanging about in between, which was a great help, of course, when you're rolling soft materials such as tarmac. We're having a look at another Fordson now. This is another Fordson Major. This one followed on after the Tall Mary that I referred to earlier, and it's slightly different mechanically, and of course a different engine. These were fitted with the diesel engine as fitted to the Ford trucks, whereas some of the old Fordson Majors we saw earlier were fitted with Perkins diesel engines, but mainly petrol TVO. Fords by this time had again changed their colour. This is something that Fords did often during their career. Before the war they used to paint their tractors orange, but then because of lack of camouflage during World War II they went over to the dark green. Then after the war the dark blue, and then the lighter blue. I believe they're still on lighter blue today. Very useful purpose-built trailer here. All the equipment's here at Castle Coombe, all the bits and pieces there for you to see. Looks like someone's been doing a charity run. That's the way to do it, with a tractor. Now this clever little machine was used for the market garden industry, wherever you found these small areas that needed a lot of maneuverability in getting it out of, and it's called a trustee. All sorts of equipment available to it, and a very thoughtful owner here, like many, has put the labels on there so that we, the ignorant, can read a little bit more about it. Normally a little engine on there by Norton or Jap, similar to the motorcycle engines. Very economic to use. Useful machine to have in and out, like as I said, the market gardens or the orchards. Now we're over to another orange tractor now, and similar to the colour of the Alice Chalmers, but it's not the Alice Chalmers, this is the Nuffield. Nuffield was the firm owned by Lord Nuffield, Morris of Morris Motors, of course. After the war, they stopped producing military vehicles, so they wanted to do something with their present factory. Rather than pull it down, they started building tractors. There you see it, the BMC 425. BMC, of course, was the British Motor Corporation. And a useful tractor they made in competition with Fords, many of them very much the same size and pattern as the Fords. They were in direct competition. And I must say, an immaculate bit of restoration here. There's a 3-point linkage system fitted on here, but of course that system was originally invented by Harry Ferguson, one of the most well-known of tractor producers, especially in this country. He invented that system that eventually went over to practically every tractor you see in use today. A fantastic idea that did away with all the separate trailers and bits and pieces of machinery. It helped one to buy units that you could lock onto your tractor, like anything from a pan to carry your bits and pieces in, to plows and drags, whatever. Another interesting Leyland here in a pretty colour, isn't it? Looks too good to get dirty. But having said that, a lot of these tractors are used not only at shows like Castle Coombe, but in ploughing competitions and various things of that nature, because the people who own them, yeah, I suppose 90% come from farming stock. Well, we're certainly going back a few years now. Well back to the early part of the century when tractors were rare machines. America, I suppose, were the leaders in the field because they had a lot more to plough and cultivate than we did with our small farms here. International, one of the pioneers of the tractor world, built this Titan. Just a simple engine up on the top of a rugged chassis. Simplicity being the middle name of this old thing. Built out there in Chicago many, many years ago. Just look at it. Not the easiest and most comfortable thing to handle or drive, but nevertheless, they did a good job of work. And still capable of one now. The famous badge of International Harvester from Chicago. Let's see how easy it is to start. There, that's not bad for something about 90 years old, is it? This Old Faithful always attracts a good crowd at every rally I see it. Crowds of interested onlookers, amazed that a thing of that era and that age is still capable of a day's work. And a good crowd too. It's always a very popular rally. And there, patiently waiting to take his immaculate exhibit around the ring, is one of our exhibitors. Yes, it's not only tractors, but plenty of sideshows too. There's a very popular little Massey Ferguson, result of when Ferguson's tied up with Massey Harris to go on producing that famous little tractor, the famous Fergie. And there's Stan, he's the ring marshal, getting things organised, and there's a couple of the staff over there. I see the chairman and the vice chairman's wife having a ride in a very interesting vehicle. More about that later. So here comes a little Massey Ferguson. Harry Ferguson designed the first of the Ferguson tractors, which was the Ferguson Brown with David Brown. Then there was a Ford version. Then after the war, they tied in with the Standard, the Roots Group, when they produced the tractors with the famous Standard engine, as you would seen in the Standard Vanguard, and of course the Triumph TR2. And so it went on until this stage with Massey Harris, the Massey Ferguson. Another big Massey Harris here. The bigger variety, 745. Another of our Nuffields. So we have the ring parade started now. And in all my life of commentating at Castle Coombe, I always find it amazing that we get a bigger crowd around the ring for the tractors than any other vehicle. Here a famous old Standard Fordson, slightly modified with a Perkins P6 diesel engine. Here they come, that interesting note on that interesting old vehicle called a Pattison, but it's basically a Model T Ford. That wonderful old Ford that were made in their millions by Henry Ford. Simplicity, no gearbox as such, just a set of clutches there. You had to learn which foot to press, etc. to get going, and I had the good fortune of driving that last year, and got a little bit confusing from time to time. It's one of our Nuffields. Gorgeous colour of the Nuffield. Many of the early Nuffields were fitted with the same engine, basically, that were fitted to the Morris lorries just after the war. And then, of course, diesel came in and proper tractor style engines were produced then. Isn't it amazing how people enjoy a ride in something different? It doesn't feel any different when you're there, but it's the novelty of a ride. I think as human beings, we're a strange lot. We do enjoy a ride, don't we? Not only just to save our legs, but there's something about it. It's a rare Alice Chalmers, it's a bigger one. Alice Chalmers produced one model called the Model U that held the tractor speed record at one time. But it was not held here at Castle Coombe, I can assure you. There she goes, bouncing and throbbing away the big Field Marshal that we talked about right at the beginning of this. It's a good solid tractor, but not the happiest to sit on all day long, bouncing up and down. Just look at the interest there of our crowd. Chairman's son on his way round now, on his own little Alice Chalmers B. Very proud owner he is. And the famous old Standard Fordson. Now this would have been a wartime model, which you can see by the smaller mudguards. They cut them back to save metal during World War II. There's the little typical grey Fergie, the Roots model Ferguson, with a petrol TVO engine. These were so popular. Every farmer wanted one, because a lot of farmers, even, up until the end of the war, didn't have their own car. They used to get around with a horse and cart, and many of them used to drive these little Fergies to the pub at night or to the dart match. Another famous British bit of tractor there, the David Brown. The Massey Ferguson. And an International. Somewhat different than that old Titan, isn't it? It's the McCormick Deering International. All these names tying in together. But tractors have got bigger and more powerful over the years. They used to be such docile, gentle old things, jogging along the road about 12 miles an hour. It's another of the Fordson Majors. Now they keep up with the everyday traffic, which I suppose is a good job when you're travelling behind one. And here we've got a fine example of one of the early cabs fitted to the Nuffield tractor. Years ago there was no such thing as a cab. You just sat out there possibly with an old sat bag tied around your shoulder to keep the wet off your shoulder blades and neck, trying to keep off the rheumatics. Now they got modern cabs with power steering and stereo. Not so in those days. Typical of some of the Internationals, offset so you can watch your furrows and work. Wonderful variety of tractors here. Now we spoke earlier about the standard Fordson with the cut-back mudguards during the war. This one would have been slightly post-war, or perhaps up to about 1940-41 with the full-width mudguards. But they were lovely old tractors. Only one foot pedal, that was on the right. You pushed it right down for brake and halfway down for clutch. Or Alice Chalmers. A bit bigger than that slender B we saw. And the grey Fergie. Produced with a variety of engines. Petrol, TBO, this one's got a diesel engine in it. The ever popular Fordson Major. Yes, I did say that it's always a very interesting parade. People come to that ring and really crowd around it. Whereas I try to interest them in sometimes the lorries and motorbikes and whatever you have. And the tractors always draw a crowd. As I said, we're right in the heart here of an agricultural community, and they do love their tractors. And some of these farmers have owned these tractors and probably used them on their farm for many, many years. And now, rather than part with them, get them up nice and tidy in a state of preservation and proudly take it along to shows such as Castle Coombe and other shows, and show it off to the crowd. And that really is a sight of beauty, that little Leyland there, isn't it? I noticed all our drivers of the male sex today, but we do get quite a lot of lady drivers and lady owners. Mainly farmers' wives, or probably the sweetheart of some farmer who feels that that's the way she holds on to him. Come to Castle Coombe and drive the tractor. Standard Fordson in dark blue. When they changed the colour just after World War II from dark green to dark blue, then they went to the dark blue Major, and then of course on to the light blue. And here she comes, our famous Titan. They weren't too artistic about their styling in those days, purely functional, isn't it? And you can see they parade around the ring and then they line up in the middle, and the crowd are then invited in to have a session with their cameras or conversation with the owners, and that's how things are learnt. And we even get tractor spotters there, you know. You don't only get train spotters and plane spotters, we got tractor spotters at these shows. Another rarity here, this is the John Deere. John Deere of America, well, great and famous make. That's got a flat engine, a horizontal engine, but this time twin cylinder. There's the Fordson with the high lift. And that's the little Ferguson with the gold engine when they upgraded the engine. And here's an old Field Marshal back in her original state, look, unrestored. But I'll bet that'll last for another 100 years yet. But every time they stop and just tick over, that poor old driver really shakes his ribs about, despite the padding. These are unusual little David Browns, as much as they got a side-by-side seat on them. This was useful when they were pulling contract equipment from farm to farm. The second man could always ride on the tractor. Something that hadn't been thought of before. He either sort of stood up on behind or come on behind on his bike. Another version of it here. You can see how he sat offset there. Some of these are beautifully restored. And Castle Coombe is one of the early rallies in the season, being held in May. And You can see the satisfaction on these chaps' faces that at last they've started their rally season. It certainly is a long parade because we have a lot of tractors here. It takes a long time to motor them gently into the ring. Then they line up, and then we have to chat about them again and keep the crowd happy with the cameras as they mosey on back to their hard standing again. But it's a lovely place here, Castlecombe, and for tractors, well, this is the place to come. Interesting Fortune here. It's the Fortune Dexter, but it's been converted. Do you know why? Because the driver is an invalid, and he can get up in the back of that with his wheelchair. He's not going to be missed out. Good luck to him. The sign on the front of this little Alice Chalmers here shows it's got a Perkins engine. That'll be the 3-cylinder P3. Later Massey Ferguson, complete with cab. He's got another Perkins engined track lane tractor on the back. Alice Chalmers, I believe. More equipment fitted to the Fortune Major. As you can see, these are very common and very popular, these Fortune Majors. Many of them still working in our fields. Now then, it ain't all British and American. A lot of people, these yuppies, are fond of having a Porsche. I bet they wouldn't like one of those to drive up and down the city. That was a Porsche. You can sense the reliability when you listen and watch that old Marshall, can't you? Marshalls of Gainsborough. Of course, always a well-known producer of steam before that. One of our little market garden, probably a Ransom. Once again, unrestored. It's nice to see them this way. One of our old characters with his little Ferguson. He used to bring a tractor he built himself, but I don't think it's advisable to bring that too many times. Little Pioneer roller there. Got a fair rate of knots. What a fine and colourful lineup it is. Reds and greens. And a few blue. Very interesting blue here, the little Unihorse. One of our miniature tractors designed for the market garden and small plot. Not a toy, although it certainly looks like it. Many of these tractors you can tell by the colour because the manufacturer stuck to the same colour all the way through. That is, except Fordsons, who for different eras and different reasons change their colours from orange to dark green to blue and light blue. Well, what's it like to own and run a tractor at these rallies? Good fun, and with good comradeship, I can assure you. They always get plenty of attention, and that's what people that exhibit at rallies like, not in a conceited way, but they like to talk about their particular pride and joy. And these old tractors are their pride and joy. Some of them have got quite a collection. They aren't the people that go on a sort of London to Brighton road run, although there have been road runs for tractors. But they're a pride to own and a joy to run in a leisurely sort of way. And that's the way you want to feel when you go to a rally of a weekend. You don't want anything hectic, do you? Not many starting problems. There's that interesting Perkins engined standard Fordson there. And our Pattison, still carrying the staff around. Yes, Model T Fords were not only built as cars, they were built as trucks and many other agricultural and industrial adaptations. Many of these owners and drivers will leisurely make their way, as they are doing now, back to the bottom of the field where all the tractors are lined and parked up together, and switch it off and have a chat, and then wander round, possibly to the Alta Jumble, to see what else they can find, bits and pieces. Of course, all vehicles owners do this if they're in the restoration business. See what they can find, and it might be something to start them building yet another vehicle, or it might be something just to keep the old one going. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how many of these little Fergusons were built as a result of Harry Ferguson, that famous Irishman's masterpiece. By inventing that three-point system, he revolutionized the use of agricultural tractors. No longer did you have to clutter up your farmyard with various pieces of machinery. They were much smaller as they all fitted onto that three-point system. As I said, they start easily, but not always. These big McCormicks built by Internationals were some built in America, but International did have its own factory over in this country and produced literally thousands for the farmers. It's an interesting subject when you start studying the tractors, right from the old stalwart there, like the Standard Fortune. And that's another machine that had many adaptations. They were turned around the other way to be used as dumpers in quarries, and Chaysides and various people like that. Muir Hills converted them to mechanical shovels. They were used in industry with different gearing. They were used in the services. And you can chat to some of these people about the origins of the various machines, and believe me, you can spend a very interesting day at a place like this. Somebody's been up the Alta Jumbo and made a find, look. Not many farmers especially in the southwest of England, had a tractor up until the war. Many farmers built their own small tractor from a car, which they would cut the body off the back. Don't try and do it with a modern car, they fold up. But when the old cars had chassis, they could do this. Some of them geared them down and made motor mowers. They built their own farm utility, as it were. And then during the war, when agriculture and more ploughing had to be in the offing because of the produce that had to be produced. Well, then we had help from the War Agricultural Committee, providing land girls, etc., to plough up your land. And then farmers realised it was an important thing and started buying their own tractors. But up until World War II, most of our farms in around this area, everything was done by horse. And to plough a big field, when you think you walk about 11 miles to plough an acre, well, it was a happy relief for the ploughman, I think, when he took over tractor driving. Lucky chap there. I'm sure he could sell his number plate and buy another tractor. I wonder if he'll restore that one day and put it back in its pristine original state, as our BMC driver has here. Yes, these BMC Nuffields were something new, as I said, after the war, but direct competition with the Fordson, but I don't think they ever pushed the Fordsons off their pedestals, you might put it. Always a good solid seller was the Ford. Porsche again. You've only got to take one quick look at that and realise that it's not a British or American built tractor. You can see that smart European line to it, can't you? Certainly different. Very rare too. There's a little grey Fergie. It's lost nearly all its paint. But old Reg there brings it along and always got it running. He's that sort of person. Some of these will run on petrol all day, but normally you'd start them on petrol and they run on TVO, which is tractor vaporizing oil. And there's the pilot's cockpit, look. There's the foot control on the right that you press down for clutch and right down for brake, and your throttle was operated by hand. So simple. 3 forwards, 1 reverse. The old favourite pan seat. There's another of our Porsches, slightly more Porsche looking than the other one. But still, the old simple pan seat. Quite a lot of people collect just the tractor seats. I have from time to time seen very interesting displays of the not only tractors but farm implement seats of that era. Quite a colourful, attractive patterns, shapes they are too.
Sure. It's a lovely old thing. What's it about 250 or 350? Lovely, typical of that era.
It's good to wander around down here because they have all switched off. It's much quieter and you get a chance to poke your nose in around everywhere. Just look at the simplicity of the mechanics of them. But as I've said many times, simplicity means reliability, doesn't it? A lot of work to be done here, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if next year at Castle Coombe this is going around the ring in all its glory. You can see here how the front axle is adjustable for width and track. Yeah, a lot to be done. Well, I hope you enjoyed your trip around Castle Coombe, seeing everything from the big tractor down to the little unihorse built by Lee Francis there. It's been a good variety, a good day, good weather. Come along sometime and have a look at all those tractors. Sure you'll enjoy it. Well, I'm Jerry Burr. I'm down on Mike Lawrence's estate near Highbridge in Somerset. We're going to show you around now to some of the equipment he's got here. Old vehicles of this era, way beyond redemption I would say, but you never know. We're also going to look at some very interesting old-time harvesting. As well as agriculture, our host for the day, Mike Lawrence, has been into the heavy haulage business. Now he's got a real gem of heavy haulage here. This is, I reckon, the oldest heavy haulage trailer in existence. Once belonged to that great firm Winds of Cardiff. Now when you see the heavy stuff going around on the roads today and compare it with this, it really is an education. Look at the size of the castings of those wheels. No brakes anywhere, just four wheels, a good tough chassis. And I understand when they refurbished this, the only place they could get the wood for the pole center of this one was from France. But here she is, a fine example of some very early heavy haulage. Here we have, undergoing restoration by Ross Lawrence, the son of Mike, an old 1912 era Allen living van. Not your touring van for your holidays, but this one was actually used with a group of chaps who went round with their steam engines doing ploughing. Similar vans were used by the road roller drivers, etc. Just a plain simple van with living accommodation, a stove inside, drawn along on solid wheels there. A rather simple way of life, but an essential way of life for these people who are away from home for many days at a time. Sometimes their wives traveled with them, sometimes not. And occasionally I remember the days with the old roller vans when you would see a bike on the back, so at least the driver could pop home and see her occasionally. Well, now we're up what might be known as the tip end of the exhibition now. And the strange thing I'm just thinking about, I can look across the field there and see the motorway with all the modern stuff going, and just a field away, here we have these old relics. What have we got amongst this Aladdin's cave, as we could call it?
Well, this is what they term in the vintage world as in need of restoration.
Very much.
You have in the corner there a class. It was a baler of a sort. It only made a very, very loose sort of a bale. The continental people seem to like that way of conserving.
So that's
hay.
continental.
It's a German machine made by Claas, and it just virtually gathered the grass up in and put some string round it.
Yeah.
It didn't really compress it seriously. No. There's the relics there of an old reaper and binder.
It's a Fordson Major.
Relics of a Fordson Major of the sort of 50s.
50s, yeah. Chicken houses.
A couple of chicken houses.
Seen
Another
one of these.
machine made by Jones. That is a Jones Tedder, which was a very, very popular machine. I sold quite a few of those in the early 60s.
Well, somebody one day will get the wire brush out and a tin of paint.
It may well be. It's not gone too far.
But come to that, it's quite artistic to see it how it is now. I'm sure there's lots of people will sit here and make a lovely painting of that.
I love looking at people's junk heaps.
Well, we've certainly got a good, sort of ringside view today, we put it then.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on.
Thank you.
We now have a miniature. And don't let's hear anybody call these models. They are miniatures because they are every nut and bolt as the original. Lou Lewis here bought this one and finished rebuilding it. It's a 4.5-inch scale Burrell.
Yeah.
Burrell, the famous old Charles Burrell of Thetford in Norfolk. How long have you had it then, Lou?
About 3-4 years, and I bought it sort of partly finished, and there's still a few bits and pieces to do on it, but it's one of those things you gradually get round to, you know. But I had to make all the bits and pieces, the odds and ends like valves, you know, the governor and bits and pieces.
And as I said, they're every bit nut and bolt as the original, and of course there's a lot of power there.
Yes, he'll pull roughly in the region of 4 ton. Roughly.
That's a lot for a little girl like that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. If I can get the grip, he'll certainly pull it.
What Burrow is she modelled on?
It's 1895, round front axle type.
Ah, yes, I
the
see.
later ones have got square axles. In fact, most of the ones you see have got square axles.
Yeah, I have noticed that. 1895 what? An 8? An 8 horse?
It's a 6 horse.
6 horse?
Yeah.
That's a single?
Yeah, single, yeah.
Yeah. Nothing barked better than a Burrow single, did it?
No, that's right, yeah.
Lovely characteristic bark to them.
Yeah.
So, how long did it take to fire up this to get it going?
About 3/4 of an hour from
That's not
cold.
bad. That's not bad, yeah. Do you have a putter blower on there?
Oh yes.
You have to for a smaller model like this, don't you? Then you keep her going all day and keep her
Oh
quite
yes,
happy.
he'll go all day on a bag of coal. You know.
That's some cheap running nowadays.
It
isn't
is, yeah.
Anyway,
it is.
Lou, thanks for your chat and thanks for your interest, and we should see you at one of the rallies
Oh
shortly,
yes, yes.
hopefully. Bye for now then.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
again.
Thank you.
Well, somebody else has decided to come and join us today and brought along this beautiful exhibit. Another example of what we've seen so much of today, old cars converted into commercial vehicles. Mainly these would have been used for farm use, although I have seen them used by furniture dealers and coal men in the past. This is an old 1927 Austin, typical of the old cars of that era. Would have had a big saloon body on there, going right the way back with about 6 seats in. A lot of these were used for taxi purposes. A simple old 4-cylinder side valve engine, but they had something the modern cars didn't have or don't have. That was a good stout chassis. Therefore you could chop the body off where you wanted to. It would stay in one piece instead of fold up, and you could build a little lorry body on the back. Now this must have given somebody a lot of use during its life, and now it's restored to bring to such shows as this today. A lovely example.
Well, here's something that takes me back to the, I suppose, the happiest days of my life, that of lorry driving. Back in the 50s, here we have the Q Dodge. Dodge Motors, an American firm, also produced a Q in Great Britain. This famous model was known as the Parrot Nose Dodge, and you can see why. At this time, Dodge were still using their 6-cylinder side valve engine. Some of them had Perkins P6 and R6 in them with different gearboxes, 4-speed and 5-speed. But this particular model was produced with the Briggs cab. Now this same cab and similar bonnet was not only used on the Dodge here, but also used on the Leyland Comet and the Thames 4D. Slight alterations in shape here, but this is a time when a lot of lorry firms were buying in components and using common components. There she is, the famous Parrot Nose Dodge. A little bit more fascinating junk here. The old advanced diesel roller. These go back into the sort of late 40s and 50s because small diesel rollers like this were much more popular and useful than the steam rollers. Most of the steam rollers had a disadvantage with the rolling tarmac because you have to reverse the steam roller, which meant reversing the whole steam mechanism. Therefore, there was a dwell between forward and reverse in which the roller would sink into the tarmac. With these modern diesels, they could just whack them from forward to reverse very quickly and did away with that dwell time. And here's a typical example of one of those old rollers, and there she lies, wrapped up in leaves and stinging nettles. Well, another make of tractor we became familiar with during World War II was, of course, the Alice Chalmers. They sent over those little lightweight jobs that we were very doubtful about the toughness of them, but turned out to be a very good firm. But what's this particular model?
This is the Model A,
Yeah.
which was a very big engine in the back end of an Alice U, which was their sort of Fordson standard equivalent of.
Yeah.
And this was a very expensive tractor to buy and was generally only operated by thrashing contractors because it was too big for
pulling big
anything.
machinery around and be not just an ordinary farm tractor.
No.
But we never imagined things that big on a farm in those days,
No.
did we?
Again, this is of similar but even bigger power than the Alice, the International W9 and the KSLA.
Yeah.
But even this was a bit bigger than that.
That's a big 4-cylinder motor in there,
It's
isn't
a
it?
big brute.
And this is the same model?
Same model, yeah. I don't very often see two together.
No. That's the beauty of a day like today, is coming across the rarities. Well, this is a rare beast. Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, you've come across them before, obviously, the Turner.
I've known them. They've been in this area for quite a long time. Kellens of Cannington actually tried marketing them very hard with not a great deal of success because they were so expensive.
Yeah.
But this came in the early 50s and was a V4 variation on of a diesel engine, which was unusual, and farmers do not accept anything different.
Nothing different, no.
But
you can see the construction is a beautifully built thing, isn't it?
it's nicely engineered, but it didn't have a great success story. Unfortunately, the one customer of mine that had one spent more on it in repairs in the second year than it cost.
It was a good idea at the time.
It was a good idea at the
So
time.
that's the Turner, and I see they advertise themselves as the Yeoman of England.
The Yeoman of England.
Now, what about this little job then?
Well, this is the International Harvester Co, McCormick, whatever you like to call it. This is the W4, which was the baby compared to the W9 that which we saw just now.
Yeah.
This was a very popular tractor on farms in this area. It was nice and easy to use, much faster on the road than a standard Fordson, much more nippy, more economic on fuel. It had independent brakes, belt pulley and power takeoff.
Much more advanced. Of course,
Much
America
more
were really into tractors a long time before us, weren't they? And I should never forget our local farmer when he turned up with one of these. Some of them thought, that's not going to last long on a farm, but didn't they do a grand job?
They were wonderful little things. They compared to a horse, you see, it would work all day. It didn't get tired.
No.
And also, it was adequate power for most people.
It's amazing the power. There's only a 4-cylinder petrol engine in them. The alley charmers, we always called them there. What model is this?
This is a Model B.
That is the B, yeah, the very popular B.
They were, in fact, originally brought in from America, and then this will be one that was actually assembled at Totton near Southampton.
Oh, is that where they assembled them,
Yeah.
down there?
Yep. And they
Of course, a lot of them would have been lost on the way over during the war,
Well-
obviously, with the merchant ships.
as time moved on, a lot of the parts were made here in this country.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the engine was still from America.
Imported.
But this was more in vogue after the war than it was during the war. It was during the war we lost a lot at sea.
Could have done.
I'm always thinking I'd like to get down and pull some of them up.
Is there to be recovered. Well, we're back to the old traders again. This is a typical site, isn't it? A few years ago, just a typical farm trader.
That is-
Probably something he put up, made from an old horse-drawn too, or whatever.
That would have been a cart that would have been in use every day of the year on most farms.
Yeah.
You could put low sides on it and haul dung with it. You could haul hay with it. You could haul corn with it.
Put his milk churns up on the back and
Milk
take down to the
churn,
gate, because
yeah,
everything was
whatever
picked up
you
in churns
wanted.
in those days.
That would do it.
They certainly got their money's worth. And you also saw a wonderful range. I know I can't recognise the wheels on there, but I love going around some of these old farms trying to recognise the particular, some old American car pre-war
Yeah.
wheels.
I think this is a bit later than that because
Yeah.
that was a trailer that was probably built by Lamperts here in Somerton.
Oh, was it?
Yes, I think
Oh, well.
so. Well, it looks like a Lampert or else it's a Keen. I don't know which it is, but
Well,
it's
You're the expert.
fairly popular on local farms.